The Falcons and Lions face off this weekend in Detroit in an early battle of undefeateds, and amazingly the over-under is sitting at less than 50 points. It's Quinn against Julio, Tate against Trufant, and the reigning MVP against the richest man in the NFL. For football fans that love fantasy points, and gamblers that love style points even more, this is the game for you. Atlanta is favored to win on the road, but not everybody seems convinced that they can leave Detroit with a victory. After all, if Matthew Stafford has taught us anything over the years, it's that no matter how good you are, if you wander into that lion's den unprepared, you might just get eaten. Everyone already knows just how much damage the Falcons offense can do when operating at peak efficiency. Julio Jones commands double coverage, Devonta Freeman pounds the rock in between the tackles, while a rotating mix of Tevin Coleman, Taylor Gabriel, Mohamed Sanu, and Austin Hooper all provide their fair share of big plays. As a collective unit, they are a cold, ruthless, almost surgical killing machine that has dominated the league for the last 2 seasons. But in Detroit, they might just meet their match in a quarterback that embodies everything that Atlanta isn't. Matthew Stafford can be borderline reckless and aggressive and complete throws that most quarterbacks would never even think of attempting. He's comfortable when the script is thrown completely out the window, and rather than thriving in the almost mechanical, methodical structure that the Falcons have mastered, Stafford is really at his best when the game is well past the point of insanity and nothing makes sense anymore. Down 2 touchdowns with 5 minutes left in the fourth quarter and no timeouts left? Yeah, that is his comfort zone. It's almost like he doesn't enjoy winning unless he gives half the state of Michigan a heart attack in the process. But my point is this, I've counted out the Lions all offseason, all preseason, and so far all regular season too. But now that the big bad Falcons have come to town, I think Detroit can win this game. The one Achilles heel that has consistently remained for the Falcons defense is the short passing game. They cannot handle hybrid receiving backs, they cannot handle passing concepts that work the horizontal stretches underneath, and they consistently struggle to limit yards after catch. It's a symptom of the style of defense they play, really, which is predominantly a cover 3 zone, because the cover 3 zone only has 4 underneath defenders rather than the 5 underneath defenders that you typically see in a cover 2. Only having 4 underneath defenders means that they're more spread out, there's larger seams in between the zones, which means more space for the underneath passing game to thrive. The Falcons play cover 3 because that style of defense excels in eliminating the deep passing game as long as you have the personnel that can run it, which they do. But in order to really make it work, you have to be able to rally and tackle in space to limit the short passing game first, or else it's just going to eat you alive. And in several instances, they have not been able to do that. Going back to the Super Bowl, running back James White tore them up underneath with 14 catches, 110 receiving yards, and a receiving touchdown out of the backfield. In week 1 of this year, Bears running back Tariq Cohen led Chicago in receiving when he had 8 catches and 47 yards for a score. In week 2 against the Packers, Ty Montgomery, who's a wide receiver converted into a running back, racked up 6 catches out of the backfield for 75 yards and a receiving touchdown. The Falcons have a major problem schematically, and it's that they cannot stop the short passing game at all. And they're now going up against a quarterback in Stafford who has lived in the short passing game for years. The Lions have not had a 100-yard rusher since Thanksgiving Day of 2013. That's almost 4 full years without a single 100-yard rushing performance. Stafford has had to move the chains and keep his offense on schedule by himself since Amir Abdullah was still at Nebraska, Golden Tate was still in Seattle, and Jim Bob Cooter was still just a hilariously named offensive assistant in Denver. Throwing screens, quick outs, slants, snag routes, and option routes out of the backfield is his life. And unfortunately for Atlanta, that's been their death as of late. If this isn't a game ripe for Theo Riddick to get a million catches, I don't know what is. I'm telling you, I've seen this movie before last year when the Lions took on the Jaguars. They run a very similar defense to the Falcons over in Jacksonville. They both have that Seattle Seahawks kind of DNA in them. And in that game, the Jags cover 3 was just as susceptible to the underneath passing game as Atlanta's. Riddick tore them up out of the backfield with 8 catches for 70 yards on 10 targets, and unsurprisingly, that game plan worked. Detroit as a team rushed for 14 total yards. Not 40, 14. They could not run the ball at all, so Stafford sustained drives with Riddick and Dwayne Washington as underneath receivers instead. And of course, I gotta mention Anquan Bolden and Golden Tate finding soft spots in between the zones as well. Some teams use underneath passes almost like an extension of the running game like they do in New England. But for the Lions, this was their running game. There was a play late in the second quarter of that game that perfectly encapsulated what makes running backs so dangerous against cover 3. Riddick gets the dump off underneath, and look at how much space there is to work with. And he's only got 4 underneath zone defenders to deal with instead of 5. With his quickness, he makes 2 guys miss in space, and typically in a cover 2 you would still have a 3rd or 4th tackler right there to clean up and limit the gain, but that's not the case in a cover 3. If he makes the first wave miss, there is no help around or behind them, and he's pretty much guaranteed to get a first down or more. You have to be a perfect tackler every time in this style of defense because the margin for error is almost non-existent. But that's a lot easier said than done against these hybrid receiving backs whose entire skill set revolves around making people miss. That's why Riddick dominated the Jags. That's why James White, Tariq Cohen, and Ty Montgomery all had success against the Falcons. And it's why Dan Quinn's defense has some major matchup problems to worry about this weekend with all the yards after catch threats that Detroit employs. But running backs aren't the only way that the Lions can attack cover 3. They know that zone defenses can be exploited very easily in the intermediate and deep passing game as well if you have the right play design. And more often than not, Jim Bob Cooter does dial up the right plays. The short passing game is their backbone, but there's so much more to it than that. You look at this example from last week against the Giants. New York doesn't typically live within cover 3, but they do bust it out from time to time, and this was one of those times. Stafford knows that it's cover 3 because the safety, Darian Thompson, is walked down to the slot, and they have a corner still on the other side with outside leverage on a tight end. A corner not following a receiver and instead staying home to cover a tight end is a huge red flag for zone coverage because usually in man coverage that corner would follow his receiver to the other side of the field. Obviously that did not happen here. So just with formation alone and seeing how the defense reacted to it, Stafford already identified the 3-deep zone look. And he's so good that if you give him that pre-snap picture and make it easy on him, he'll pick you apart no matter how talented your defense is. Eric Ebron is running a deep over route here underneath the double posts. Thompson is in the slot carrying that inside post to Landon Collins in the deep middle, while the boundary corner, Eli Apple, is also cleared out of the way by Marvin Jones. These 2 posts are referred to as, you might have guessed, clear-out routes. This play is designed to get the ball to the over route underneath Apple's deep third zone and set up big yards after catch for Ebron. It is without a doubt a cover 3 killer. And this is the downside to his zone defense. If the offense sees it coming, they can just call a play that intentionally moves your zone defenders out of the way and puts a receiver right in the vacated area, just like this play here. After the snap, the play action fake pulls the linebackers up, and Stafford is just reading Thompson carry that slot receiver to watch if he stays with him or if he falls off. If he stays on the slot post, Ebron will be wide open for an easy first down. If Thompson falls off that slot early to pick up Ebron, that would open up a window to this number 2 post from Marvin Jones deep down the field. So Jones is really just the alert here if Thompson does something unexpected. But as expected, he stays on the slot and Stafford lays it out in front of Ebron for the first down. The only thing that saved this play from being an even bigger gain was a quick trigger and a great tackle from Landon Collins in pursuit. This is just one example of how a great play caller can turn a well-executed defense on its head. Schematically speaking, there is always a solution for every defense out there. You just have to know when to call the right plays at the right times to exploit their tendencies. And even beyond schematic advantages, whether it be with receiving running backs or exploiting zone beater concepts against cover 3, the Lions have another advantage going for them on offense, and that's Matthew Stafford himself. 9 years in the league and he still makes some of the most ridiculous, I'm talking batshit insane throws I've ever seen, and yet he makes it look effortless every single time. It's crazy. There was one I saw when I was charting that Jaguars game from 2016 where he's rolling to his left to buy time for Golden Tate to come open on the end cut, and while falling away to his left, not even stepping into the pass, he throws this ball behind and away from his body and places it perfectly in front of Tate, leading him over the middle for the first down. I mean, physically, this should not work at all. But when you have Stafford's arm strength, accuracy, and touch, you can get away with these crazy kinds of throws. Aaron Rodgers, Russell Wilson, and to an extent Derek Carr all do this too, and I think those 4 might be the only quarterbacks in the league who would even attempt this pass. Stafford just happens to do it more than anyone else because, quite frankly, he can. He's just that gifted. There was another, I'll call it a cheeky throw against the Giants last week that was quintessential Matt Stafford. It was in the first quarter on 3rd and 2, and the Giants are showing what looks like either cover 2 or cover 4. Again, you've got a corner, Eli Apple, matched up against Eric Ebron out wide. That's a red flag for zone, and with a 2-deep safety look, that then points to either cover 2 or cover 4 as your options, unless they're doing something super exotic. The Lions are running a whip corner smash concept on the front side, with Ebron running the whip out back to the boundary, while Kenny Golladay runs the corner route. This is great for attacking cover 2 because it places a vertical stretch on this underneath zone corner in the flat. It gives him a choice. Either he can stay home on the whip route underneath and potentially expose his safety to giving up the corner route for a big gain, or he can drift back and undercut that corner route and risk giving up the whip route for a pretty much automatic first down. He's got to essentially play in no man's land and wait for that quarterback to stare down his receiver and release the ball before he can make a decision. But even though it puts a lot of stress on his zone, it gives him a great opportunity to make a play on the ball and get an interception if he times his break right. So this throw does carry a lot of risk for Stafford if he doesn't execute it perfectly. Post-snap, Stafford is reading Apple, who drifts to undercut the corner route, so he takes the easy first down to Ebron and keeps the chains moving. It's a good read and a good throw, and on the surface it's nothing really to write home about. But on the broadcast angle, you can see how Stafford made this throw and why his style is so entertaining for a hardcore film nut like myself. Watch him very closely in slow motion here as he's reading Apple. He's waiting and waiting, staring down that corner route to Golladay intentionally to move him off the whip route to Ebron. And you can see in Stafford's eyes he starts his throwing motion looking at Golladay, then turns mid-throw to look at Ebron and opens up his stance, almost making kind of an off-platform throw to get the ball to Ebron wide open for the first down. He literally head-faked Eli Apple into biting on the wrong route in the middle of his throwing motion. That is the mark of a veteran quarterback that knows how to move people out of the way in zone coverage to set up his receivers for success. And that is also why, despite only passing for 122 yards last weekend, I still thought Stafford was the difference in this game because he made the plays when it counted. You look at him later in this same game do it again in the red zone. It's another third down, the money down. This is what you pay him that giant contract for, to execute in these kinds of moments. The Giants are showing a 7-man blitz zero look here, while Detroit is running a mesh concept, which is an excellent play call to break man coverage. And as I said, the Giants are showing man. But if these linebackers drop out of their blitz look into zones, the mesh would now take a lot longer to develop because Stafford has to wait for his receivers to clear those zones and then get free into the throwing lanes closer to the boundaries. That can take 3 or 4 whole seconds sometimes, which is an eternity when you're sitting in the pocket. But that's the play that was called. Stafford has a look that he can make it work against, and it's on him to make sure that it works. Post-snap, the linebackers do indeed bail out into their zones, so the Giants are only bringing 4 in pressure, which is pretty predictable just going off their tendencies. Stafford's waiting for this mesh to open up, but like I said, 3 or 4 seconds is an eternity in the NFL, and the Giants have a defensive line that won't give him 4 seconds. Stafford feels Jason Pierre-Paul, who just sacked him for a fumble on the previous drive, coming off of that right edge, and I love that he instinctively tucks that ball away from JPP's reach, dips his shoulder, and immediately escapes to his right to try to make something happen on the move. This is Matt Stafford's comfort zone. When the play breaks down, he never panics. He just looks for an opportunity to make the defense panic and force them into a mistake. His eyes are downfield looking for a play to be made, and as soon as Landon Collins comes off of the goal line to take away Riddick in the flat, that was the mistake Stafford was waiting for. He lofts the ball up high and away from Ebron where only he could get it, and the Giants stood no shot of contesting this touchdown. Collins was too far up, and Thompson was too far behind. You can bag on 122 yards all you want, but Matt Stafford made plays when it counted. He threw 2 touchdowns on third downs. He kept drives alive with the short passing game and with his mobility, and he allowed the Lions to control the time of possession battle all game long. Week 1 showed that Stafford can still make a fourth quarter comeback against the Cardinals and throw for 1 billion yards anytime he wants, but last week showed that he can also play the attrition game too. His offense can be just as efficient and suffocating as Matt Ryan and the Falcons. So the real question is this: can Matt Ryan and the Falcons play like the Lions? When things start to not go Atlanta's way and they become victim to that crazy Detroit voodoo bullshit that seems to happen in every fourth quarter of every Lions game, can they withstand it? Can their linebackers cover and tackle Theo Riddick in space? Can their corners find the ball in the air and stop Stafford from throwing bombs downfield to Marvin Jones and Kenny Golladay? Can they, as a unit, keep Golden Tate from willing himself across the sticks on every third down screen pass? When the Lions get serious and start throwing haymakers late in the game, as they always do, can the Falcons take it on the chin and hit back? Make no mistake about it, folks, we've got a heavyweight fight on our hands this weekend. It's undefeated against undefeated, unrelenting against unflappable, unstoppable against unbelievable. As of me recording this, the current over-under for this game is somehow only at 49.5. If you really do believe that these two quarterbacks, these two MVP frontrunners won't find a way to put up 50 points together, well, wanna bet? Thank you so much for watching this week's episode. I completely meant what I said, by the way, when I suggested that you guys bet on this game too. If you have a strong agreement or disagreement with my breakdown, this week's sponsor is perfect for you. It's BetDSI Sportsbook, one of the best sportsbooks out there. They sent me over a bunch of lines and a bunch of over-unders for this weekend's game, and this one, above all others, really jumped out at me. I knew I had to do a video on it immediately. I mean, this is a really tight matchup that could honestly go either way. So DSI, the great sponsor that they are, they're giving all viewers of the Film Room a free $25 wager to use however they want with the promo code FILM25. It is no cost to you, and you can use that free wager to make some real money off of this game or any other game that you have strong feelings about. Personally, I don't think there's any way that this game stays under 50 points, so that's what I'll be focusing on this weekend. And you better believe that Theo Riddick is going to be in every single one of my daily fantasy lineups. He's going to be the backbone of my team this week. So thank you to BetDSI for their sponsorship and their generosity for giving back to my audience. You can find their sites at the links in the description, and good luck to everyone playing this weekend. And also thank you to all of our new Patreon supporters this week. I couldn't be doing this without all of your continuous support. And sponsors or no sponsors, you guys are what keep this channel going. So again, thank you for all that you do. I've got some more content coming this week, most notably my picks video, which should be out at some point on Saturday. And then next week's Film Room episode will be on a subject that hasn't been determined quite yet. We'll see what goes down on Sunday and Monday, and hopefully something crazy happens that we can look at in detail. So until then, later.